gather round, my dear listeners, and pay close attention. What I'm about to share isn't just a story. It's a chilling truth from our own town's past, passed down to me by my grandmother. It's a tale that has stayed with me ever since. Before I dive in, don't forget to like and subscribe if you want more spine-chilling tales. Now listen carefully. This all began on a bitter winter night, much like tonight. Many years ago, during a brutal winter, the Johnson family moved into that old house on Maple Street, the one people avoid. It was a dark, menacing place, with creaky floors and shadowed corners that always seemed to be watching. The Johnsons, full of hope, were a young couple with a 5-year-old son named Tommy. They ignored the house's sinister reputation and decided to make it their home. But one night, as snow covered the streets, Tommy vanished. One second he was there, playing with his toy train in the living room, and the next he was gone. His parents called for him, their voices bouncing off the cold, empty walls. They searched every inch of the house, but Tommy was nowhere to be found. Panic set in. The police were summoned, and soon the whole town joined in the search. They combed the snowy woods, looked under every stone, and peered into every shadow. But it was as if Tommy had vanished into thin air. Weeks passed, and hope dimmed. The Johnsons were left broken, trapped in a house that felt more like a prison. They couldn't bring themselves to leave, believing that somehow their son was still there, somewhere. Then, strange things started happening. At night, they would hear Tommy's laughter drifting down the halls, along with the soft chugging of his toy train. Little footsteps echoed through the darkened house. Driven by desperation, Mrs. Johnson searched the house more frantically than ever, convinced her son was reaching out to her. One night, while searching the dusty attic, she stumbled upon an old trunk. It was ancient, covered in cobwebs, and locked. With a surge of adrenaline, she forced it open. Inside, she found something that made her heart stop, a tiny skeleton, brittle and white, surrounded by decaying toys. In its hand was Tommy's toy train, but the horror didn't end there. The skeleton wasn't Tommy's. The bones were much older. As Mrs. Johnson stood frozen with terror, she felt a cold touch on her shoulder. Slowly turning, she saw the ghostly figure of a small boy with hollow, dark eyes. He smiled at her, an eerie, twisted smile, and whispered something, but what? Paralyzed with fear, Mrs. Johnson stumbled back as the boy vanished before her eyes. The police were called again, and the trunk was taken away for investigation. They discovered that decades earlier, another family had lived in the house. A child from that family had been locked in the trunk, forgotten, and left to die alone in the dark. That very night, the Johnsons fled the house, never to return. The old house on Maple Street stands abandoned to this day, a looming shadow at the end of the road. And on cold winter nights, if you listen closely, you may still hear the faint laughter of the forgotten child and the soft chugging of a toy train. Remember, my dear listeners, this isn't just a tale. It happened right here in our town. So, when you pass that house, think of the lost child and wonder what other secrets might be hidden in the shadows. Be sure to click the notification bell for more thrilling tales.